Alrighty, I'm Alex. This is Paul, and we'll be talking about automating work orders for the vast industry of service technicians that kind of make the world run. So here's your like typical cafe. You might have even been one this morning, but if you look at it more closely, there's a lot of different pieces of technology in it. You've got like coffee makers, sinks, refrigerators, might be a camera. There's the network switch that runs the Wi-Fi and Ethernet and everything that makes this run. And so every single store really has this kind of stuff. Whether you're going to like UPS to send a package, get a sandwich, go to the mechanic, etc. And all this stuff actually, for the most part, works. Like occasionally, like if you go to McDonald's, you see a down ice cream machine or whatever. But in general, it works, and that's thanks in part because of a vast industry of technicians who get called to like fix things and do routine maintenance. And so the way this industry works is you have these aggregation firms. They're fragmented and very spread apart across the country. And so they dispatch technicians that are in their network to the nearest problem. So like whether you're in California or like somewhere on the interstate between hundreds of miles between cities, there's a technician who can go do something. And big companies like Starbucks will issue 400 to 500 of these work orders a day across their chain as they have problems with coffee makers or Wi-Fi routers or whatever. And so these aggregators will actually take in all the information from the local Starbucks that knows to call them. They'll put together a work order, which kind of looks like this, and then they'll call a technician who goes and actually does the work. And so the process for these guys is actually extremely repetitive information lookup, and also kind of just like filling out these forms. So an example is, if they're looking for a camera that's down in this like Starbucks store in this area, they're gonna go and look up which store number corresponds to which address. They might look up the manager's number or whatever from an email to give that to the technician who's gonna go out there. They might also try to provide other context, like parking in the area, what hours they should go. Like don't show up at 7 a.m. to do a repair at Starbucks or routine maintenance at least. And they might also look up some other stuff if possible. So if it's like a snow removal or a street sweeping for a parking lot of a school or something like that, they might measure like the area on Google Maps, et cetera, in order to pick the right equipment and the best tech for it. So while they're doing this kind of like extremely repetitive work and information lookup, they're not really leveraging at all the fact that we have these massive databases of millions of previous work orders because they've been doing this for decades. And so we talked to Jeff, who owns a few of these aggregator firms. So like one was like in purely kind of mechanical technical services. One was a kind of like street sweeping and cleaning kind of service. He told us that these dispatchers are spending 15 to 20 minutes to like get all this information together and issue each one of these work orders. So at their pay grade, it costs about $10 just to put together that short ticket to even start the workout for the technician. So he straight up told us, if you can automate most of that process, I'll pay you $2 for each one of these work orders generated for you just to like do it for me, so I don't have to pay somebody to like Google stuff and type things. So just to kind of explain how like the process works and like where we fit into it. This is kind of the flow from like something breaks. One of these retailers will report, like the Hampton will report like my refrigeration or whatever for the kitchen here is broken. It goes to like the local aggregator service who like they know and they've worked with many times for any of their issues. And then those people will write up the like work order and send it to one of the technicians in their network to go actually execute the repair. And so what we're going to do is use AI to populate these work orders automatically. So we fit in to the aggregator service specifically. We're not talking to the retailers. We're not a marketplace for technicians. We purely just take the information that these guys are getting anyway by phone or email, and then flesh out a much more detailed work order and return it to them to then give to the technician. And the way we're going to do that is also using prior context of the millions of tickets that they've actually handled in the past. And so if you insert these, you can actually get some pretty interesting things out of the context of previous work orders. So we kind of picture this in sort of two tiers of sales. The first one is kind of filling out the very rote information that they're doing anyway. So that's things like, adding the address of the location, the like work hours, et cetera, and some like basic information about which technicians may be qualified in your network to do it. And then later on, I'll get into like the kind of like broader context of what you can do when you have millions of tickets to like learn off of. So this is kind of a demo that Paul put together. So a email came in, saying to like fix a camera in Subway store 102 or whatever. So these guys emailed the manager to like his nearest like aggregator service that he's worked with before. So now we're actually just running here a large language model to understand what the query is. And then we're integrating with Google Maps in order to actually look up the store location and then also flesh out some of the information that's pretty basic for the ticket in terms of like who this is qualified for, maybe some like likely tools to like do something like this on a camera job. And then the kind of further off, there you go. The kind of like further off thing that you can do though when you have context of millions of tickets is actually come up with like potentially more subtle sorts of things and like previous work orders that would make the next one more efficient. So these are some screenshots of some actual work orders, also some kind of more filled in ones that explain what actually the problem was, because like a technician will basically fill out afterward what they spent their time on, what materials they had to buy for it and so forth. And so this is kind of an example of what it might look like when you have context of a lot of work orders. So here the LLM is telling them back. It looked through all of the like recent tickets that they've done, and it identified 40 similar work orders for subways that have happened in the network. And so it actually knows from there that Subway tends to use the Cisco Meraki camera, right? And so it can give you immediately the documentation for that camera, and it can look at previous solved work orders. And if the technician wrote what the solution was, like the network switch was malfunctioning, switched to another port, that actually might be very useful information as kind of a first pass for the new technician to go do that job. So this kind of context creates actually really good network effects between all these aggregators. Some of these firms are actually quite large, like they have branches in a bunch of different states across the country and thousands of technicians. A lot of them are actually pretty small. So like you have like the Oakland area appliance one, or you have like the LA appliance one and so forth that does Starbucks in their area. And most of these are pretty siloed. I mean, they have a database of like the hundreds of thousands or millions of tickets that they've actually handled over the past couple of decades, but they're not really sharing that information. So somebody actually might have solved a specific problem for a new oven or whatever in New Jersey or something, and you might never hear about it until your technician happens to be upon one of these ovens for a few times in the Bay Area or something like that to make that repair. And so by adding context, by working with all of these and plugging into all of these different aggregators, we can actually make all of their technicians more efficient so they know what to do when they get to the job and what equipment to bring. So kind of looking at the market in sort of like two different tiers here. One is the like kind of immediately ready to go one of, Jeff said that he would pay us $2 per work order if we can just simply take the Google Maps, the manager's information, all the kind of stuff that an LLM can do quite well and save the 15 to 20 minutes of work that the person is doing to flesh out that ticket. I mean, across the like vast amount of like hundreds of thousands, actually over 1 million, restaurants and retail locations in the US, plus a bunch of small businesses that also usually once a year will have a network issue or something like that. I mean, this comes out to about 60 mil revenue alone, and just like $2 per ticket for the amount of tickets that are already happening in the industry charge. And if you extrapolate that to EU and Canada, it's like 100 mil or so. But what we're really looking at is kind of like the broader context of the industry. I mean, the equipment maintenance industry is a $250 billion industry in the US of labor spent making these fixes. And so it employs over 670,000 people, and yet it's still at a labor shortage of like people who are trained for these jobs. And so even like a 1% opportunity, like improvement in their productivity is a vast opportunity to save billions of dollars, of which a company that's making the best ticketing software and providing it almost as a subscription to like use it, aside from the $2 per ticket thing, just like a monthly subscription would save them so much time that's already worth hundreds of millions in its own. And all of these guys don't really have that kind of context in the past. And so this is like the only way to make such a fragmented industry of like, do you work on Dairy Queen's machines or the hotel refrigerator really improve? There's some other actual outside verticals that I think this could also eventually apply to. For example, in the manufacturing logistics industry, we talked to somebody who manages an entire Amazon fulfillment center, and he was saying every time that they build a new one, there's actually kind of like a growing pains phase of about a year or so, where you have a lot of more downtime than what's normal because it's slightly different than every other factory built before, and they haven't really built out the technical database and know-how for that facility, or train the technicians that are going to be working in that facility specifically for the issues that commonly crop up. So if you're able to immediately grab all the kind of like work tickets that are being submitted as the factory is like ramping up, you might much faster actually get context for how to make these repairs before they hit the official documentation at a monthly or quarterly rate. And in these kinds of scenarios, downtime is worth hundreds of thousands of dollars sometimes per hour if you're like an Amazon fulfillment center that's deadlocked. So I think this is another big vertical. Yeah, I mean, this is a link to the demo that you guys saw where we're just like running it through. I'm Alex. I did my PhD at Stanford in robotics, started a robot restaurant, went through YC. And Paul, you want to?
Yeah, my name is Paul. I'm a machine learning engineer at Google, previously Waymo, University of Chicago graduate school. So,
cool.
Yeah.
So any questions for the team? I'll start here.
Hi, yeah. Would you consider something like a Thumbtack on the more consumer side, a service aggregator potentially?
Sorry, what's a Thumbtack?
Thumbtack, it's like a Yelp. If you go on there and say like, I want a hardware person to come fix my microwave or something.
Yeah, I mean, they don't have. I mean, Thumbtack would be an aggregator in this industry, but the B2B side tends to be a lot more lucrative. The average ticket size tends to be a lot higher, and you tend to have a much more fragmentation in like, there's hundreds and hundreds of these service providers and service aggregators on the B2B side, where on the B2C side, there's like 2 or 3 big brands that could probably develop something similar in-house. So.
Yeah, so are you guys targeting folks that are using like a ServiceNow or other type platform? And if you are, I guess, ServiceNow is probably developing something conceptually similar. So
Yeah,
how do you differentiate what you're doing?
for sure. We did talk to someone who used ServiceNow internally, and a lot of their agreements indicate that they can't use the data that's in ServiceNow to develop something like this. So it's very likely that ServiceNow would be blocked and prohibited from doing something like we're doing, where we're leveraging millions of tickets that we have access to develop really good comprehensive suggestions. So.
Great segue to my question. Like in terms of it seems that you can add a lot of value once you have access to all these tickets. How easy it is to get access to all these tickets? Are they in some kind of easy database, or you have to tag different ones? Like how do you tackle that?
Yeah, my partner Jeff has 5 of these aggregation platforms that he's a large owner in, and a database of 1 million tickets that we could get access to pretty quickly. So
what's the market share of that versus?
Oh, that market share represents a very small percentage of the nationwide market, but yeah, we'd have to develop how we get access long term to a bigger pie.
Okay, to your question.
Sure. It's semi-related, but one of the key questions here essentially is like, you're saying that there's some kind of interesting information you can get from a bunch of tickets that share across multiple service aggregators, but what's the appetite for these service aggregators in actually allowing you to utilize data for one versus the other in this particular industry? And I guess the secondary question would be like, how many of these service aggregators can you actually sell to? Like how many of them are in existence? Because you put up some names there like Service Titan and ServiceNow, and there's not that many shots on goal if it's that type, but if there's like local ones and whatnot, then you actually have many shots on goal, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's like, they vary in like all different sizes. There's plenty of local ones. I think those are the ones that especially actually benefit from the context on this kind of thing, because they're doing some smaller subset of projects, whereas the ServiceNows might maybe have actually more like routines essentially built in. And so I don't think they're doing things as efficiently as they could be, but they do have like a lot of like probably pre-answered things for specific like ovens and whatever in their database. What was the first part of your question?
It's like, are they willing to let you use data from them to benefit somebody else?
Oh, gotcha. Right. Yeah. I mean, a lot of these like markets are like pretty fragmented, so like they're regional generally. So it doesn't really bother them, I think, if somebody like across in New Jersey or something like that is like using the same data to do their job over there. It's not like super competitive. So they already have relationships with a lot of the companies that they're working with, like the local Starbucks or whatever. Is like you're the guy that they call, and so if they can do that job faster and better, that's great for them.
I really like this idea, but I think that like the one thing I see as an Achilles heel, like I'm not saying it is categorically, just in my experience, is the issue here with getting partner data, right? Like that strikes me as a really formidable task. I mean, if it's extremely fragmented, as you say yourself, right? Then you're going to have to be writing lots and lots of custom code to extract it. And if on the other hand, it's kind of centralized and you only need to scrape it once or twice, it'll be on a platform like an existing vendor that's going to do everything they can to block you and potentially engage in legal action. So I think getting those data off effectively, having a strategy for that, strikes me as very critical. And forgive me if you disagree, I'd be quite open to a vigorous response. On the contrary.
Yeah. I mean, we do have immediate access to millions of tickets, and the guy owns like 5 different firms. So that's actually a lot of data to start like learning off of, enough to possibly make a product that, well, so the one thing is like, there's I guess like 2 aspects of this. So the first one was actually just like doing this kind of like auto fill out process. So like that doesn't actually involve a whole lot of context, doing the kind of like manager lookup, the like location added on Google Maps, and like measuring the area of a parking lot and that kind of thing. So like that's the kind of thing that everybody's ready to like pay $2 for right now, that doesn't require any of their data or context. And so as we're doing that and selling a tool that essentially saves them, 20 minutes or $10 worth of time per ticket, we are actually after that getting all of their work orders, like we're generating them after that, and getting the responses from their technicians who like fill out the end of the work order saying like this is what the job was completed. So it's kind of like organic, if you will, to give it, unless they specifically don't want to do that. And I mean, we would definitely need to talk to more customers, but I can't imagine that like LA appliances or whatever, if they're saving $8 a ticket, would care that we're like reading the like response to the ticket that says how it was completed.
So was that it or? Okay, so this is not so much as a question as it is just some advice. And this is not formal legal advice, just putting that out there. But as an IP attorney, ServiceNow's name keeps coming up. And if to the extent that your world intersects with theirs, you might want to consider changing your name. Because the way trademark law works is that if there's a likelihood of confusion,
the name was generated as the first two words that came to mind in about 5 seconds. So.
Okay, that's good. So, great idea. If you proceed with it, then probably choose a different name. Because it's easy to do so at this stage.
Yeah, totally.
Thanks.
It's a brand agency that can help.
Yeah, it's true.
I think we have time for one more question. You guys will get a chance to chat. Actually, maybe Lenny, Lenny, do you want to ask your question? You're online. The other guys are here. You'll get a chance to talk to the team in person. But Lenny, did you want to ask a question?
Yeah, I just thought generally when you talk about this, there's a humongous opportunity if you go after home warranty companies and a lot of other huge, industry out there that is beyond just these mainstream service companies. Other than that, I think my question is around how are you going to protect all of this data? There's a legal concern here. Even if you get this data, you have to obfuscate all of the PI data, you have to separate it, and then you have to customize. And then that's number one. The other thing also is that if you were to bring in this type of data, sometimes there's going to be legal ramifications because these are all related to services and other things. And so you'd have to also bring that into forefront if you're offering as a solution. So.
Do you want to talk about the data privacy side of that?
No, go ahead.
Oh, I think you're the data guy.
It's a great question. I think we have to figure that out still. And so, certainly we've made some good progress in the last few days, but have a number of questions to figure out as well.
All right, I'm here. We can talk.
Yeah, that'd be great. Anyway, so I think that we're let's thank our team.